Ross Cardinal.
I'm Alicia Sharp, and we're interviewing Walter Flynn from the U.S. Army Air Force. Today's date is September 26, 2002. Okay, Walter, were you drafted or did you go and sign up?
I took the exam to be an aviation cadet, and I passed it. That was it.
Was the test hard?
Well, it was more like, common sense, figuring out problems and judgment.
Where were you living at this time?
East Greenbush, New York.
And you're there now? You're back?
Yes, yes.
Why did you join the Army?
Well, there was a war on. We had been attacked, and I knew I would have to serve, and by enlisting I had a choice of where I would serve. And, I wanted to fly.
Did you have interest in flying before the war started?
I had an interest as far as model airplanes go, but I had never really flown.
So you picked being in the Air Force. That's cool.
Yes, I did.
What about your first days in the service? Do you remember?
Yeah. I had never really been away from home except on my high school senior trip to New York City. And a group of us had passed the physical in the old post office in Albany. So our day of departure, there was a bunch of us at the train station with our parents. And we get on the train, and you remember you could move the seats backward on the train, you could sit facing.
Yeah.
So I happened to be sitting backwards, and my wife said, "You're going to get sick riding backwards." Here I am going to fly an airplane, like I'm going to get sick riding backwards. And then we went to Fort Dix for our basic training, and that included, everything you do in basic training besides KP and guard duty. And
What's KP? What is KP?
kitchen police,
What is that?
where you peel hundreds of potatoes and
Oh,
clean the dishes. That's KP.
okay.
And you want me to continue on basic training?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, from Fort Dix, I went to Maxwell Field in Alabama to be classified whether I'd be pilot, bombardier, or navigator. And this was, a bunch of tests. And I suppose because of my height and because I passed the tests required, they assigned me to pilot school. And before the classes weren't ready to accommodate the newest group of us, so we were sent to a field in Florida, Eglin Field, and there we pulled more guard duty and KP. Finally, they sent me home on a 45-day furlough, and after that I reported to Tuscaloosa, Alabama for first phase of my training, which was primary flight training. And that was about 2 months, or a little longer than 2 months, and from there I went to Newport, Arkansas in what they call basic flight training. And another 2 months there, and then I went to Craig Field in Selma, Alabama for my advanced phase of training, which was, prior to getting a commission as a second lieutenant and a set of pilot's wings. And from there, I come home on leave and got married.
Do you remember your instructions before going into the war? Do you remember what they told you was your mission, or?
No, we weren't really assigned any missions at that time, and not until we got eventually assigned to a group that was in combat. But our mission then was to, try and survive the pilot school and graduate as a pilot because the washout rate was about 50%. When people that went on pilot training, even though they needed pilots bad, they still washed them out, if they couldn't qualify. So we didn't really get mission assignments until we joined the combat group overseas. But after my leave was over, I had to report at Pinellas Army Airfield in Florida, and I had to do combat flying in a combat aircraft, which was a P-40. And we flew about 60 hours there in the P-40.
60 hours straight.
Well,
Or
maybe
total?
2 or 3 hours a day, but that included night flying and gunnery practice and formation flying. Just honing up our ability to fly a combat airplane. Well, there's more. There's not. But we got orders to ship out for overseas duty, and we boarded a C-47 and flew down to South America. And we stayed there a couple of days, and then we got onto a bigger aircraft to fly across the South Atlantic, which is the shortest distance between the two continents. And this was a converted B-24 bomber. And we flew across the South Atlantic to Africa, and then we got into another C-47 and we flew up the Gold Coast of Africa, and we got to Algiers, and I was then qualified as a P-40 pilot, and we were going to join a unit called the 9th Fighter Command, and they were at Benghazi in Africa. And in Algiers, one of my friends traveling with us ran into a colonel, and he knew Jim, and he says, Jim, where are you going? And Jim says, well, we're going to join the 9th Fighter Command as P-40 pilots. And this colonel said, well, he says, I don't think so, because they've gone back to England.
Wow.
So here we are, about 60 pilots with no place to go.
Wow.
And in the North African theater at that time, they needed P-38 pilots. I'd never flown P-38. In fact, it's a twin-engine airplane, 2 fans flying around. But we were all delighted to get the chance, and they split us up alphabetically into 3 groups, and having an initial F, I wound up in the 1st fighter group, which is then and still is the oldest group in the Air Force. And in the group, they split us up into 3 squadrons, and I wound up in the 27th Squadron and started flying combat missions. But having never flown a P-38, I had to get checked out. And of course, there's manuals you read, but the P-38 is a 1-pilot airplane. But they had what they called a piggyback P-38, where they had removed the radio from the rear and the armor plate, and you could get another passenger up in there with a funny old backpack chute on it. So this pilot flew the aircraft, and I watched what he did. And after he landed, he climbed down and he says, you're going to go fly this now. I said, oh boy. So I did fly it, and I soloed, and after about a week or so of practice flying, and with about 8 hours in the aircraft, I went on a mission. And then I started flying missions.
Do you remember what were your feelings when you first went on a mission?
Well, it was probably total dread, because I was assigned to fly on, well, I have to use my hands on this, because we used to fly 4-ship flight. And usually one flight would be leading, and we'd have 4 flights, and they called the leader Red 1. And our call sign was Pet Dog. We had, you know, funny call signs.
Yeah.
But I was Red 2, and my leader had told me on the ground, he says, son, because he was about 4 years older now. He says, son, don't worry about what you see, or don't do anything, but just stay on the wing and fly formation, which I did. But it was throttle either all the way off or all the way on. But I stayed in position, and on missions like this, we would take and carry an extra auxiliary fuel tank. And as soon as you got a safe altitude, you would switch your fuel selector to this belly tank, we call it. And sometimes when you're switched, you would siphon fuel from your main gas tanks out the vent. But I had no chance to look at this. I had no chance to watch my gauges. All I could see was my leader. So we went through the target area. We were escorting B-26 bombers, and we were busy. And he was firing at 2 ME-109s coming at him, and they were firing at him. And I had never seen a P-38 fire. I had never seen it. So here comes these pieces out of a chute, you know, it's the shells. And I thought to myself, well, he's hit. What am I going to do? But no, he was just firing. And finally we got the bombers through the target and headed back home. And he said, Pet Dog, let's have a fuel check. And that's the first chance I had to check my fuel. And I realized that I had most of my mains had gone out through the belly tank vent. But when we engaged in combat, we would drop belly tanks, because you can't fight with the belly tank on there because it takes away the maneuverability. So he got me into Sicily because he had sent the rest of the flight out. And he told me just exactly what power settings to use and what RPM. And he got me into Sicily with about 10 gallons of fuel. And this aircraft burned 30 gallons an hour in each engine, so that's 60 gallons an hour.
Wow.
And I had about. But that was the start of my missions, and I flew 51 of them. And there was only a couple that were eventful as far as I was concerned. Some of them, you know, were a piece of cake, and some of them were rough. But
how old were you at this time that you started flying the missions?
I was 22 at this time.
Still young.
Well, as we got experience, you know, we advanced up through the positions in the flight. And you would sometimes be leading a flight, and if you had advanced successfully, you sometimes would be leading the squadron. And if it was your squadron's turn to lead the group, sometimes you'd be leading the group. And that's 48 airplanes. But we survived. A lot of our friends didn't, because the loss rate was over a third. People just didn't make it.
What was your most vivid memory of your whole experience?
The first mission, and my 21st mission, I had an engine shot out on the 21st mission, but I got back safely. I figured I got back safely because of the training I'd had and then flying with the squadron and the group I was in. It was a group of people that, where you had a lot of, you know, trust in these people. And in fact, if the weather was bad and we couldn't go on a mission, we'd go up and fly locally. And it got so you didn't didn't mind who was leading, you know, anybody could lead and you could follow, or you could lead and they could follow. It's just a well-knit group. And in fact, this group is still flying now. They're flying the F-15s, which I have a picture of over there. And we just came from a reunion at Langley Air Force Base where they're located. And my squadron is deployed right now over in Turkey. And they are there like 90 days, and then another squadron will go for 90 days. That's the situation it is now. No more questions?
Like, did you have a best friend or like a favorite person to fly with when you're flying?
I have a best friend who's, he lives in Baltimore, and we met after the war. And we were assigned to an airfield in Naples, Florida. We got to fly together a lot. And we've been great friends ever since.
So were you friends at the time during the missions or after?
He flew a different mission.
Okay.
He flew what they call close ground support for Army troops on the ground, whereas we flew fighter escort to escort bombers, and occasionally we would have a dive bombing mission, and sometimes we'd get a strafing mission. You don't understand what a strafing mission is? Well, you're attacking targets on the ground.
Oh, okay.
Okay, moving targets and vehicles. But he had this, in a different unit, he had this ground support mission, and he flew a different type of an aircraft than I did. And we, you know, sometimes we needled each other about the type of airplane we flew and which was best.
Is he the only guy that you keep in touch with now?
Well, no, well, due to these reunions we have a reunion usually every 2 years, sometimes one for the individual squadron. Or no, it's every 2 years, but they alternate odd years and even years. And I still am in contact with a lot of those people. And due to the internet, we can, you know, communicate, and they keep me up to date. Also, there is a website for First Fighter Wing that you can bring up on the computer, and you can sit there for hours and look at the stuff. They have pictures, they have accountings, they have stories by individuals, you know, what they did, how they survived, and the website is the firstfighter.org. It's 1stfighter.org, and if you ever get a chance to bring that up on a computer, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for sure. But what do you think like, the major thing that you learned was like either a life lesson or even just flying airplane or the fighters? What did you learn about a lot of things?
Well, when you're, you know, flying in combat, or anyway, it's a matter of trust. You know, you learn to trust people and trust their judgment, because sometimes, you know, your life hangs on what their decision is or what your decision is.
When you were on leave, what did you do?
When I was on leave,
Yeah.
I usually came home, and I was married and did what other married people do.
After the war, like, was it different living like here than like it was before?
Well, I wife can tell you, she was here during the war and I was overseas, and she went through the rationing and the gasoline stamps and all that. And it was tougher for them being here with the rationing than it was for people in service, because the good stuff went to the people in service. After the war, I debated on whether staying and making a career or going back to my civilian job. And being that I was married, I elected to go back to my civilian job for a few years. And I missed flying, and finally I went into the Army National Guard and started flying for them. And I flew, whatever they had, fixed wing or helicopter, and finally wound up flying the bigger helicopters. And I did that for 23 years in the Army National Guard.
How long did you serve in the Army?
3.5 years. In active duty. 3.5 years.
What did you do in civilian life between when you came out of the war and went back to flying?
I was an analytical technician in a laboratory, GAF, BASF.
Huh?
I worked for them 42 years.
Wow.
Meanwhile, I was a weekend warrior.
Right.
And my wife can tell you about being a weekend warrior where, you're going to school or you're doing your qualifications through extension course, and active duty, extra 2 weeks here, extra 2 weeks there. And we had 3 children at the time, and I would have to go to school for 16 weeks in the middle of the winter, and Eleanor was at home keeping home fires burning, and Joe lived right in the backyard from us, and Joe probably remembers these times when I was away at school.
So you came home to the States on leave. How long was leave? How much leave would you get, and how frequently?
Well, if you were in combat and you had completed your missions, in our case it was 50 missions in the Mediterranean theater. In the 8th Air Force in England, they flew 25 missions. So when your missions were up, you could come home for permanent reassignment someplace else.
Oh.
So some people served in the Pacific after the Mediterranean, or some people became instructors in the States. I was with a group that we were sent home after we completed our missions for 30 days at home, and then went back over to fly somewhere. But being the second group to do this, when we got off the ship in Naples Harbor, the general medicine agreed that it was not a very good deal for us, to have flown and go back. But he says, you have a choice. You can go back to your squadron and wait till we make up another ship to take you home, or you can fly some more combat. So I rejoined my unit at Foggia, and I had a choice to stay there and fly if I wanted to or not, and get promoted and bigger job. But I thought it over for about half an hour, and due to the fact that I was married, I said, this is a chance I'll probably never get to come back home again. Because I figured I had used up all my luck. And I elected to come home. It's probably a good move on my part.
And did you see a lot of Europe? When you weren't flying, did you see a lot of the country of Europe or of Italy?
Oh yeah, we had missions all over the Mediterranean. In fact, we've flown from Africa to Athens, Greece. We've flown to southern France. We've flown to southern Germany. In fact, when we flew to southern Germany to targets, we got a double mission credit for that, because it was, so long.
So you would leave Naples in the plane, and they would tell you you're going to go to Germany to drop bombs?
Well, we were based at Foggia, and our missions could be anywhere in that Mediterranean theater. And in fact, the one occasion, we came back up to England to pick up some P-38s. The 20th Fighter Squadron, 20th Fighter Group, was getting rid of their P-38s because they didn't like them in that theater. And they wanted the 51, so we flew to get in a B-17 as passengers. We flew back down to Marrakesh and flew up Bay of Biscay to England, and we stayed a couple weeks there checking out the P-38s, and then we flew them back down by way through Portugal, Spain, and we landed at Gibraltar for fuel, stayed overnight, and then we finally worked our way back up to Foggia with these new P-38s. But the P-38 had the range where you could probably go any place in the Mediterranean theater to cover a target.
You mentioned one of your engines was shot out on one of your missions.
Yeah.
What's that like? What's the difference in how do you fly a plane when you're missing an engine? If we were riding with you, what would our experience be? How would we know one engine was gone?
Well,
Besides my screams.
P-38 has counter-rotating engines, so therefore there's very little torque with both of them running. So when one quits or you have one shut out, you're going to have the torque pushing you one way or the other. And you know that in fact, would you see those red lights from another airplane blinking at you? And you know if you don't move, you're going to get hit.
Right.
So, but this was an error on the group's part, because usually somebody would call in enemy fighters, and we had a weave over the bombers to protect them. And if we saw fighters coming in, we would wait till the right time, and then we'd call a break. And we'd break into them, and they would either go down because they wouldn't be able to get a bead on. So we were flying across from Africa. We come all the way across the Italian boot to a place called Ancona. We still had our belly tanks on. And somebody called a break. They called the wrong squadron to break. So here we are, still with belly tanks on, and all of a sudden, my right engine is hit, and these were liquid-cooled engines. And I knew I was hit, and the coolant is coming out of the engine, and if I don't shut it off, it's going to, burn itself up anyway. So at that time, I called a break and dropped belly tanks at the same time, and we're turning, and belly tanks are flying down all around us. But I headed for the ground, and you can shut that engine off, feather it up, and you can correct for the torque, and you can fly. In fact, that's one of the major things you do when you're training a twin-engine airplane, what to do on a single engine. So I was lucky to escape the melee and headed back down the coast of Italy, and I found an airfield just south of the bomb line. The bomb line is a place where our bombers couldn't bomb past, or couldn't bomb this side in friendly territory. So I got it back on the field down there and survived that one.
So you would fly back down the coast by yourself as a hit plane? You would go off by yourself, or would there be other missions still?
There was another aircraft that I was trying to catch. Here I am on one, but I was down on the water level, to evade any possibility of being attacked. And I picked up this airplane. I couldn't identify it. I couldn't see it close enough, but I was creeping up on it. Finally, they called on the radio and said, "Identify yourself." And it was one of the bombers that had aborted this mission. So through his directions, I found this field and landed. But as I had approached the coastline at Ancona, it was a heavily defended seaport on the Adriatic side of it. And they defended these seaports with the batteries of 88 millimeter anti-aircraft weapons. And I knew that, and I expected to get shot at. But I could see them fire on the ground, I could see the flash. And as I saw the flash, I would hold right rudder, and that would skid the airplane, because they're tracking you on a straight line. And as I saw the flashes, I skid the airplane and out the back, around as the black puffs of flak. And I finally did evade them, and just at this time I picked up that other airplane, but
And then once you land with a plane that has a problem, do you just get in another plane, or?
well, I was quite a ways away from my home base, and I had to wait, spend the night there at this field, and it happened to be a group of pilots that were flying the ground support mission close to the bomb line. And I stayed overnight with them, and their next day a B-26 had come in, and I managed to get a ride back to my base with the B-26.
And what happened to your plane?
It was pretty well shot up. I don't know whether they fixed it or not, but it had about 50 bullet holes in the right engine nacelle. I don't know it.
Are any of these pictures of that plane?
No, but the group picture there shows the P-38s that we were flying.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of these pictures.
This was taken in 1944. A lot of these people are still alive, and a lot of them are gone, but these are the people we get together with at reunions. I'm sitting right there,
Could you point yourself out again?
right there.
Can you get any closer?
Now, yes, yeah. That's a more modern version of the P-38.
And how, is that what you flew through most of the war? The P-38?
Yes, yes. I flew 51 missions in that. And this is where I took the gunfire, right in here.
And how many different planes would you say you flew? Like that one was grounded and then you got another one. I mean, how many?
Well, this happened to be somebody else's airplane that day. And I had to acquire my own aircraft because somebody had completed missions, and I flew that most of the time.
And did you have a name for your aircraft or not? Nickname or?
Used to call it after my wife.
Which
Had her
is,
name on it.
which is?
Eleanor.
Eleanor.
Now, there's another picture there of an F-15. This is what they're flying today. One of the best fighters in the world. In fact, this unit, the first fighter wing, was the first unit to be supplied with F-15s. And this one here is called Maloney's Pony. And you'll see the tail numbers. The FF stands for First Fighter. In fact, if you see these aircraft in the news, you'll know who they are. And the 023 was the tail number of a plane that my good friend Tom Maloney flew. And he was our leading ace. He had 8 victories. But he had a bad accident and had some problems, and he wound up in the hospital for 3 years. But he flew a P-38 called 023. And any time this present unit, this 27th Squadron, gets a new aircraft with 023, that's another Maloney's Pony. And it's quite a story in itself. Well, that was an advanced trainer. This is a advanced training school. That was at Selma, Alabama. And you can see the difference between this and a P-38.
And that's you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is a war diary by a good friend of mine, Frank Lawson, and this is from, you know, the intelligence that people would debrief you after a mission. And there's all little incidents in there about people, what they did, and about football games, softball games between enlisted people and the pilots. And
How do you know the author?
huh?
How do you know the author?
Frank Lawson?
Yeah.
I flew with him. He was one of the, in a group that was going overseas to fly P-40s in Africa. But a very good friend of mine. In fact, he flew World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Flew in all 3 wars. Oh, this is written by John Mullins. It's a story about what our mission was, and it's the personal accountings of missions and action, and it's a very interesting book. In fact, here's a route from Foggia to Ploesti, which was a serious target for the 15th Air Force, because no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't knock it out. And eventually we did get it, and as a result of that, it helped to end the war, because you couldn't refuel their tanks and aircraft. That was a major factor in deciding the war.
What's this book here?
Well, this is a history of the first fighter written at Langley Air Force Base, where the first fighter is still stationed now. And it's from 1918 to 1983. And it tells how the unit was formed in World War I and up until 1983. And it tells the different types of aircraft they had. It's historical description of the first fighter.
Oh, by all means, let's see. All right. And was there I'm spying on you with your wife. Tell us about your DFC.
I'll do that.
Unless you don't want to.
No,
That's
I don't
fine.
care, but I had proceeded up to the ability to lead the squadron based on experience. And one day we had a maximum effort to get the target at Ploesti. And maximum effort is hundreds of bombers and hundreds of fighters all going for this one target. And we would usually take off half hour after the bombers because we were faster. And we would take off and form up and head out towards where the rendezvous point was. But this particular day, we got out over the Adriatic and the weather was socked in. And we couldn't see the ground. But I was leading and navigating and holding a compass heading. And a lot of the groups, the bomber groups, had turned back. We could hear on the radio that they had turned back.
Because of the weather?
Because of the weather, but we had no opposition, we had plenty of fuel, and we were on top of the overcast. So I just kept heading on the direction I was leading the group, and all of a sudden there was a break in the clouds and I saw the Danube River. And at that point, the Danube makes a right angle bend, and I knew exactly where I was and just made a correction. And all the bomb groups had turned back with this one bomb group. And in about 10 minutes we picked them up and they were being attacked by the enemy, and we then proceeded to drive them off and bring them back home. This bomb group thought it was, a good job. And they wrote letters, the commander of the bomb group wrote a letter to our group commander expressing the gratitude for, you know, saving, or picking him up and bringing him back safely. And the commander said that they had lost 4 or 5 aircraft already, and they would have lost a lot more if we didn't get there. But, you know, it just happened to be at the right place at the right time. We did get him home. We only lost 1 pilot, but he ditched in the Adriatic, and he got out of the aircraft and was picked up by Air Sea Rescue. So the fighter group only lost 1 plane, but altogether we had a few victories and saved the bombers, and that was what our job was.
Great. Any other questions from anyone? Anyone have any other questions? That was great. Thank you very much.
Is that it?
That's it. We've overlooked? 30 years from now, someone watching this, something you want to...
Well, you know, when the war was over, we didn't talk much about it. In fact, I want to tell you, it was about 12 years before I would talk to the children about it. But I think now that we're at going to another war, that people are interested in hearing about our war. In fact, our war was fairly clean, being in the air. And the war on the ground in both theaters, in all theaters, was dirty. But being in the air, even if we lost people in the air, but you didn't really encounter what they did on the ground. We lost over 30% of our pilots. Some was just fortunate, some was accident, some was weather, and some was due to the talents they had. I think now we've got to seriously think about this war in Iraq. We just can't go in there without a black and white decision that he's doing something, and we got to have it proven, or else we're not going to have the support of the world. And you just can't do that.
Thank you very much.
That wasn't on tape, was it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.